I have no health and no ammo. What do I do in this situation? Oh well, of course. The obvious answer is to jump into the roof to reach the resupply cabinet from red spawn on the other side by exploiting a quirk in the sequencing of source engine movement. If you hit the roof and duck, you're able to somehow trigger the resupply cabinet to refill you, even though the roof is thick, and the area that the resupply cabinet activates on doesn't even go through the ground at all. So what's going on? This is the player bounding box. It's what the game uses to determine collision. When you duck, this box shrinks downwards. In the air, it still shrinks, but with an extra adjustment. Your position also gets moved upwards. But here's the catch. This box doesn't actually shrink immediately. In TF2, the source engine updates the game at a 0.015 second interval. Every 0.015 second, the engine runs through everything in the game and updates them, applying gravity to someone falling, restricting their velocity if they're going too fast, etc. When it goes through and starts updating everything in the world, it has a priority list that specifies which type of events to process first and which to process later, which is where the problem begins. In the context of our bug, this priority list dictates that the shift upward as a result of crouching in the air should happen first. Then the code that checks if you're inside a trigger volume runs second, and last is when your bounding box is finally shrinked. Trigger volumes are a section of space defined by the mapmaker to do something special when a player enters it. For example, a trigger volume for walking into the capture zone, or a volume to kill the player. Or in our case, the space to activate the resupply cabinet. So what happened was that, when we jumped into the roof and ducked, first, our body gets shifted upwards. At this point, the game hasn't run the code to shrink our bounding box yet, so we're shifted upwards, but our bounding box is still its full size. Next, the engine is told to process trigger volume events after doing the shift from ducking, so it now checks if we're in the space to trigger the resupply cabinet. With a full-size bounding box and the shift upwards, we are now within the trigger volume, so the engine detects that and runs the refill. Only after this does the engine then proceed to shrink your bounding box. This is why even though we never physically go through the roof, we actually kind of did in the 4th dimension. So that's why we get resupplied. But this cabinet is set to only work for red players, so blue players won't be able to do this trick. Soldier is the easiest class to do it with, but this applies to any class, so Demo can also do it, and even the NG. The roof is 16 units thick, and air ducking shifts you up by 20 units, so there is a 4 unit window to hit the resupply trigger. And yes, because this is a source engine-wide problem, and nothing exclusive to this specific resupply cabinet, you can actually do this on the first spawn too, or any other map that has a resupply on a roof less than 20 units thick.